Yang Xinhai thought this was much better than breaking his back doing hard labor on the construction site. Therefore, he gradually lost interest in working, just as Yang Xinhai was feeling smug about making a living by stealing. He also came under the radar of the public security organs. However, if left unchecked, he would pose a threat to society. In order to effectively stop this kind of wandering theft behavior, on June 11, 1990, the public security organs submitted a request to the Shan Labor Education Committee of Shanxi Province for approval. On the grounds that Yang Xinhai was suspected of multiple thefts, he was given a 2-year labor education punishment during the labor education period. Yang Xinhai didn't show much subjective maliciousness. After getting out of the reform through labor facility, Yang Xinhai was all alone. Like a lonely shadow, apart from the meager travel allowance given by the reform through labor facility. He had no money at all if he wanted to live a free life. He had to steal and rob. By this time, it was almost May Day, in 1992, in the Central Plains. The wheat was turning yellow at the tips. He bundled up his simple belongings, hopped on a northbound train, and headed to Shijiazhuan. Yang Xinhai had just sold 5 catties while walking through the streets and alleys when a bunch of young men came towards him and wanted to buy peaches. These guys also seemed to be rural migrants working in the city, but since they were in a group, they were bold and spoke very rudely. They just said right away that they'd buy the whole basket of peaches and started to ask about the price all at once. Then, without waiting for Yang Xinhai to bargain, one of them said, "We won't treat you badly." Regarding this re-education through labor, instead of reflecting on himself, Yang Xinhai was full of grievances. He thought to himself, "All I did was steal a bag on the bus. There was only about 10 yuan in it. Let's all check our pockets. We'll pay whatever we've got." So the group pretended to rummage through their pockets. In the end, they found a total of $112 and stuffed the money into Yang Xinhai's hand, saying, "That's all the money we have. Pour the peaches to us." Yang Xinhai said, "The money is too little. I won't sell. I can't sell." But he couldn't withstand their large numbers. In the blink of an eye, the whole basket of peaches was taken away by them. Why are there so many unfair things in the world? Why am I always bullied everywhere? Does doing small business mean being inferior just for the sake of survival? This blow made Yang Xinhai's enthusiasm for small business plummet. He decided to stop doing small businesses and still look for jobs. Maybe those peach buyers who took advantage of Yang Xinhai had long forgotten about this incident, but the psychological trauma it caused to Yang Xinhai was irreparable. Why couldn't they just give me a warning and let me go? Why did they have to send me for re-education through labor? Why don't they give people a chance to correct their mistakes? Once someone makes a mistake, can't they start anew? But despite his grievances, he still stayed obediently in the re-education through labor facility for a full year. This was also after he had observed and scouted the place for a long time. He noticed that urban people often just left their bicycles lying around, casually, without any dedicated supervision. Some shabby bicycles weren't even locked at all. It was as easy as pushing his own bicycle away. Without any danger, he sold this bicycle for less than $30 afterward. He felt that although it was easy to steal shabby bicycles, they weren't worth much, so he started to study how to pick bicycle locks. When Yang Xinhai stole things on the construction site, he didn't steal those bulky items, but specifically targeted the cable wires. Because cable wires were both easy to steal and valuable at that time, 1 catty of cable wires could be sold for more than 10 yuan. And there were recycling stations everywhere. So it was very easy to dispose of them. Stealing more than 10 catties at a time could fetch more than 100 yuan. Although at this time, an aluminum basin alone couldn't turn him into a devil. It was just a helpless act of self-defense, but we can't ignore the fact that no one bothered about the foreman owing him a year's wages. While the foreman's exploitation of him far exceeded the value of hundreds of aluminum basins. Yet, once the foreman reported him for stealing an aluminum basin, the law enforcement police immediately stepped in to deal with him. Once he mastered the method, he could steal new and more valuable bicycles after stealing bicycles several times. He found it difficult to dispose of them. He might even get into trouble when trying to sell them. And bicycles never fetched a good price. Then he came up with other ideas later. Yang Xinhai started scavenging at night. He would steal some steel bars and wires from nearby construction sites, and also steal aluminum pots and basins from residents' homes. That's when his thievery began. If those workers hadn't bullied him, he might have continued on the path of doing small businesses, and perhaps his life would have been different, but this blow accelerated Yang Xinhai's steps towards a life of crime that fall. Yang Xinhai returned to Linfen City. He was now making precast slabs at a construction site, and later helped dig small canals in the suburban countryside. When winter came, and there was no work outside, he found an odd job at the original seed farm. Yang Xinhai watched as the group walked away from him, eating peaches. Laughing and shouting happily, he squatted by the roadside for a long time without getting up. He silently calculated an account in his mind. Today's business not only didn't make any money, but also cost him a few dollars. Calculated according to the daily food expense of $4 at that time, it was equivalent to 2 days' worth of food money. He also saw that some people got rich through improper means. Just because he secretly took a large aluminum basin from the canteen to sell out of personal resentment, it brought about a series of troubles from then on. Yang Xinhai believed that since he couldn't make a living through legitimate labor, he had no choice but to turn to a life of crime, stealing and robbing to survive. The first theft Yang Xinhai committed was stealing an unlocked bicycle in Taiyuan City. On April 25, 1992, upon the expiration of his reform through labor term, Yang Xinhai was promptly released. By then, Yang Xinhai hadn't been home for 4 years after getting out of the reform through labor facility. He sent a telegram to his father, asking his father to come to Xi'an to pick him up. Yang Zhongguin was extremely excited upon receiving the telegram from his third son. He said, "I finally know where Xiao Huai is. I've got to go pick him up right away." That was enough to go to Zhengzhou to learn how to paint, so Yang Xinhai boarded the train, bound for Zhengzhou. After Yang Xinhai registered at the paint school, he found out that it was actually a furniture processing factory, although they didn't charge tuition. They basically didn't teach paint skills either. Apprentices could only follow the boss to make sofas, and were occasionally allowed to take a peek at the furniture painting area. In fact, they were working for the boss for free. This kind of roving pickpocketing behavior was soon discovered by the public security organs in August 1992. While Yang Xinhai was pickpocketing on a bus, he was caught red-handed by plainclothes police officers from the Chang'an branch of the Shijiazhuang Public Security Bureau. On September 20, 1992, the Re-Education Through Labor Committee of Shijiazhuang City, Hubei Province, made a decision. Yang Xinhai was sentenced to 1 year of re-education through labor for theft. Doesn't this incident imply a lack of social fairness? Of course, a lack of social fairness doesn't necessarily turn a person into a devil, however. Yang Xinhai's gradual descent into becoming a devil was definitely related to these unfairnesses. Yang Xinhai's devilish career also shows that when an incident like the one with the aluminum basin occurred, our society didn't have a better corrective mechanism to achieve real fairness. Otherwise, perhaps this devil wouldn't have emerged. In the early summer of 1990, when Yang Xinhai was stealing cable wires at a construction site, he was caught on the spot by the security guards and handed over to the Baxiao branch of the Xi'an Public Security Bureau for handling. During the investigation of Yang Xinhe's theft cases, the public security organs found that, although this person had stolen many times, the cumulative amount of his thefts was not very high, so he didn't meet the criteria for criminal punishment. After being caught having an affair by his female landlord, Yang Xinhai couldn't stay there any longer. He moved to Homer City and still made a living by doing some small businesses. But when selling peaches once, he encountered another heart-wrenching thing that morning. Yang Xinhai bought 35 catties of peaches at a price of 50 cents per catty at that time. The retail price in the market could reach 70 cents per catty. So, carrying his bedding roll, he went around the construction site. Whenever he saw someone in charge at a site, he'd ask if there was any work available. In the evening, he came to a construction site. The foreman sized him up, although he wasn't tall. He was young and fairly sturdy, so the foreman agreed to let him stay and cook. Cooking for the construction team wasn't very tiring. He could eat his fill and didn't have to endure the wind and sun. He noticed a recruitment advertisement for a painter at a corner of the waiting room and stepped forward to take a closer look. This advertisement was posted by a certain paint school in Zhengzhou. It stated that if one was unwilling to pay tuition, they could work. In lieu of it, Yang Xinhai felt his pocket inside were 2 months' worth of wages, 72 yuan in total, and a little money he'd earned from his previous small business, adding up to just over 200 yuan. Some scholars who study crime say that there are no born career criminals in the world, and Yang Xinhai was no exception. When he dropped out of school at the age of 17, he thought about supporting himself through his own labor. He worked at coal mines, brick factories, and construction sites one after another. However, despite his hard work, he often didn't receive the corresponding pay. He also tried to make a living by doing small business, but was repeatedly bullied while doing so. In a fit of anger, Yang Xinhai stole an aluminum basin from the canteen and sold it for 13 yuan. When the foreman found out, he immediately reported it to the police. From then on, trouble started for Yang Xinhai. The police not only recovered the 13 yuan from selling the aluminum basin, but also made a record of it in the criminal archives. His devilish career started with an aluminum basin. They provided meals and paid him 36 yuan a month. He thought it would be nice to work there steadily, but after the Spring Festival, there was no more odd job at the farm, and Yang Xinhai was laid off once again unemployed. Yang Xinhai felt like a floating duckweed. With no sense of stability, he slung his bedding roll over his back and lay in the train station waiting room, pondering what to do next. Yang Zhongwen scraped together enough money for the fare and boarded the train heading west. After a day and night of bumpy travel, he arrived at the hotel where his third son was staying. However, the hotel clerk told him that his son had checked out and left before 3 o'clock in the morning. Yang Zhongwen missed his third son. He squatted outside the hotel for quite a while, feeling sad, and then took the bus back home, all by himself. Yang Xinhai didn't avoid seeing his father on purpose. After this experience of hopping on a train without a ticket, Yang Xinhai broadened his scope for stealing. He thought that it was easy to get caught if he stole in one place, but it would be harder to be discovered if he stole in different places, one after another. After getting off the train in Shijiazhuang, Yang Xinhai didn't look for a place to stay like a lone bandit. He specialized in pickpocketing at the railway station and on buses. However, his good days didn't last long. He just felt too ashamed to face him back then. His father couldn't afford to send him to school, so he left home in a fit of anger, thinking that he'd make something of himself outside and then go back to show off in front of his father. But he never expected to end up being released from a reform through a labor facility. He didn't know what to say to his father. He really didn't want to listen to his father's endless nagging anymore. He wanted to continue wandering outside and live a free life. After the Spring Festival, in 1990, Yang Xinhai wandered to Shan City and hung around the Batchiao area. He still used scavenging as a cover to steal things. There were many construction sites in this area. Yang Xinhai had worked on these sites and was familiar with the situation there. He knew that the building materials scattered everywhere seemed to be under someone's management, but in fact, the management was very lax. For general construction sites, the work fronts were stretched very long, and it seemed that there were a large number of workers here on the surface, however. Most of them were migrant workers, recruited from various places. They just buried their heads in work and didn't pay attention to guarding the things at all. So, if one wanted to steal things from the construction site, one just needed to avoid the foreman and the special guards after work. Yang Xinhai worked there for over a month, didn't get a single cent of salary, and even spent over 100 yuan on food. He didn't want to do this money-losing business anymore, so he slipped away when no one was paying attention. Yang Xinhai returned to the train station and boarded a train bound for Taiyuan. Shanxi, after getting off the train in Taiyuan, now who wanders many construction sites in the city and thought they must need laborers. For Yang Xinhai, who had been on the move for over 2 years, he was quite satisfied to land such a job. This construction team had contracts for several construction sites in Taiyuan, so Yang Xinhai worked there for over a year. After a year, the construction team finished all its jobs, all the hired migrant workers left one after another, and the construction team's canteen closed down. At this point, Yang Xinhai should have left with dignity, however. The foreman refused to pay him his wages.